Okay, so I'm going to go through and give you all a little feedback on your 5 poses animation. I'm just going to go down through them alphabetical order. It'll probably be either 2 to 3 videos to get everybody done, so I would encourage you to watch through everybody's videos and not just skip through until you find your own. So starting off with Farah, I have to say I like that you named it Anim8. I don't know why, that cracks me up. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Okay, clicked it right. There we go. So to just kind of watch through this once. Okay, so I think I mentioned some of these general notes in class. The big thing to me is like this: when the character lifts his foot off the ground, it feels like his hips are still in the middle, and you kind of need that shifting of the weight over this way, over his other hip, just so it feels like it frees up this foot to be able to lift off. Also feel to me like right here's a big one, like the way that foot comes up off the ground, but it still feels like the weight is over that back foot. And so it kind of feels like that foot's not pushing him forward. It's kind of just like sucking up off the ground, like something just sort of tugging it, like if there was a string hooked to his knee, it's like lifting it up off the ground. And so it really should be happening here is this back foot should be pushing him forward, and then after he gets so far forward and off of that foot, then that foot would come up off the ground and go forward next, right? And so I don't feel like that's happening there, so it feels like it needs that body mechanics of that push in there. And you get a little bit here on this one as well. And then there, if you look at this, like where the character's weight is here, while this foot is up off the ground, he would fall forward. So the way you can kind of think about this is if we get a point where both feet are on the ground, right? We'll do it here, right? So with both feet on the ground, this is his base of support, right? And so the overall mass of his body right here is, right over top of that base of support, and so it's not going to tip over, right? But the second that he picks one of his feet up off the ground, like when we go back a few frames, like to here, right? Well, this foot isn't supporting him, just this foot is supporting him, right? And so we can draw the base of support straight up, right? Well, the mass of his body is over here, and so that would just be tipping him over, if that's his leg, that would just be tipping it over, right? So something has to be over here, because that's just the base of support now. This entire range isn't the base of his support. And so you have to kind of watch out for that. And so I'm using yours as an example, Farah, because it's one of the first ones, but this is a note that I probably have to give more than any other note in this class. So it's just the first time you all will hear it. I feel like there's a couple of other little like awkward pose things. One of them being how far back this hand still is. I feel like it needs to slip underneath. Like if we were, so let's say I'm looking at the character's chest from the side. He's kind of bent over like this, right, and his head's going underneath. Right now it feels like his arm is bent like this back behind him, and then here's his shoulder, right? And so it's really hard to bend your shoulder back that far. And so I think it needs something. I didn't really mean to erase the whole thing, but if we have this whole thing, if this were the angle, then maybe what it needs is it needs to feel like the shoulder is dipping like this, and then the elbow is up like this, right? I don't even know if that makes sense, if you can even see what I'm talking about there. But right now it just feels like his shoulder's like twisted so far back that it's like his fingers are like pointing behind him. And so I think there's a couple answers. You could sort of change the pose up to make that, change the spine and some of that up. Or you just have this start slipping underneath the board, like right here. Like here it's almost all the way underneath it instead of still back here in front of it. Because then when the character gets to here, like that just feels like it's too far back. This other arm feels pretty good. The only other thing I really notice is in this pose right there, I feel like that knee sort of rolls outward a little too much, and it looks like that would be uncomfortable to have his legs spread that wide. Otherwise, I think the poses are looking pretty good. I feel like the timing is a little even. I feel like you could kind of speed up and slow down through some different areas. Just a little bit of timing adjustment on there to kind of make that pop a little bit more and give us some fasts and slow areas. So Courtney, but it's redo or revamp. Well, there's redo. Revamp seems newer. I'm guessing that's the one you're wanting me to look at. And it opened in the other screen. So let's pull it back over here. Let's let it play through a few times and see if it speeds up. Okay. Overall, this is looking pretty good. So I'll sort of show you the things that I'm noticing. So right here, this is kind of what I was talking about with Faraz. I feel like you need just a little bit, as the character is making these last few really quick steps, a little bit more side to side in the hips, just to get that weight shift there. I think your timing is working pretty good. I feel like you could do just a little bit more with how the feet come off the ground and how they hit the ground again. So just a little bit. Like I don't really feel the either hitting on the toe first. I feel it a little bit. I feel like you could kind of maybe what it is not how they're hitting. Maybe it's actually as they're traveling through the middle here. Let me open this in QuickTime so I can scrub. I know a lot of you hate QuickTime, but at least I can scrub back and forth in that. Open with QuickTime. Okay. So let's see, right? I think it's like right here. See how that back foot comes off the ground, but it's still kind of in the pose of how it pushed off. So it's still kind of in this pose, right? Instead, why don't you have it make it feel like it's still continuing to push off? Like maybe it's still like kind of pointed backward a little bit, you know? That's a really bad drawing, but you get the idea. Like, you know, instead of that, the heel is back. Maybe the toe is still slightly contacting the ground. And then, as we continue through this, you'll see how it's still kind of in that position. Like in this pose, maybe the foot's in that position, but maybe the toe is kind of flattened out now, and we get a little bit more like that, right? And then, that's not bad as it hits the ground. So here's another one. Like if we look at how it's like going, how the foot is shaped as it's going forward there. It's like completely kind of flat across the bottom, and I would imagine the toe would dip a little bit. So loosening that up a little bit would really kind of help the feet feel like they're a little bit more fluid. You also kind of have this first little section here. The foot just kind of slips back, and I think if you actually made that as part of a step, like a short step that, you know, got the foot back there kind of early and gave it a few frames to hold that before this quick like walk through here. And again, I think here, you know, the weight needs to go over that way just a little bit more. Okay, so let's move on. Overall, that one's really good, Courtney. Just wanted to mention that. So front, side, back. So I think let's go ahead and let's just pick one and see what we got. Okay. And then side. Okay, and back. So overall at this point, to me, I feel like you need to pick a camera, because then you can really just work toward that camera to make sure your line of action is really, all your poses are reading really well. And so right now the one that's working the best for me is the back camera. So maybe somewhere in that range. Let's go and see if I can open this in QuickTime. So I think the weight shift is kind of fighting you as well. I think that, I get stuff like this, and as I was, talking to Farah, yeah, he's got his hand there, but this is his base of support, and it's going to push upward this way, right? But his weight is over here, right? And so it's really going to be pulling him in this direction, trying to pull him over. So I think that you really need to just have these hips shift back and forth over the leg that is still on the ground for each of the steps. I think that would really help the animations a lot. Especially on this one. Look how far over this leg he is, even though he's pulling it forward. So just shifting that over. It's looking better, especially since you shot some reference. I think overall your timing is a little even. I think you need to sort of play around with how quick certain areas happen and how slow they happen. Give a little bit more texture to the movement. I don't know why this is not playing. There we go. So particularly if we looked at it from the side view, we'll notice that it just feels like the hips are kind of on this progressive movement forward. Speeds up a little bit right through there. So it's kind of like they slow down a little bit right there, and then they speed back up. It's a pretty progressive movement forward through the whole thing. And so you get a little bit of that slowness there, but it still feels like it needs some work to kind of play around with the overall timing of the motion. You also got a relatively decent amount of foot sliding there. And you got some of the stuff I was showing Courtney about the feet, where they're kind of flat as they're moving through the air. And so that's something that I think I would work on a little bit on that. So I'm going to move on to Jacob. Okay. So I think this is one of those situations where trying to make the joke is actually making the animation like not read. Does it make sense? Well, I mean, it's reading. Everybody got it as the joke, and I think there's a consistent issue in critiquing animation that funny and good are not always the same thing. And so this is funny, but it also has to be it also has to communicate as correct in whatever world or whatever physics is going on here, right? And so the thing about it is because the pose is so strange, it's hard to tell if it is correct or not. Does that make sense? Like, I mean, it's a crab walk. To me, the whole thing feels a little too fast. I like that you have the weight shifts in there, but it kind of feels like there's some hard hits on the movements. So it's like the hips. If you were to do an arc track on the hips, they hit a little hard and sharp. So instead of like the hip shift arc, instead of it going to one side and then kind of coming back like that, it's going and smacking and coming back, and you get this like, it feels like it's hitting a wall right there as it smacks that point and changes directions. And so that would just be a little easing. And again, this is something that a lot of people are getting. Your feet are staying pretty flat throughout the whole thing, and the hands are staying pretty flat, pretty pretty even. I think you get a little bit more bend in the spine. For the most part, the spine stays straight up and down, and I think just getting a little bit of this like curving to one side or the other in the upper spine would really loosen that up. But again, like I think the issue with it is because the pose is so strange. I expect the animation is supposed to be a little bit more cartoony, and so I think the worry with an animation like this is that people would look at it and say, "Oh, that's funny," but I can't tell if it looks right or not. And so, the general audience would get a kick out of it. An art director may have a hard time picking out what it is that it's showing about your work. Like, is it showing that that you're good at animating a cartoony or exaggerated walk, or a walk underneath this post, or is it showing an attempt to do realism that is not executed correctly? Does that make sense? So it's like, that's one of the reasons that I was aiming a little bit more for something a little more vanilla, or at least not as gimmicky, I guess. Having said that, I think that there's a lot that is working on this. I do think you got some pretty nice overlapping action in the hips, and you definitely have some weight shift going on. It's a little hard on the hits, and the feet are a little flat, but I like where it's going with that. But to me, I think I would slow it down and add a little bit more overlapping action to all the body parts, just to get a little bit more realism. A realistic guy doing a goofy walk under the post, not the cartoony version of that. Hopefully that makes sense. And sorry, that was kind of a just a general comment to everybody, because I know we get a lot of animations that are sometimes the gag sometimes has to be trimmed out in order to make the animation or the execution of the animation more clear. So this is one where I think you could just clear it up, and it would be it's a funny, like, goofy little walk underneath the bar. So let's go and start here. This is JC. There we go. Okay. So this is one that I think your poses are looking really good. I think that you could use a little bit more work overall on the timing, mainly as they're going under the bar. It feels like it gets a little slow right through here. So run that section as like from this pose to about this pose feels a little long to me, and it's all right to be that long. It's that it feels like it's all right for that area to be a hesitation, but it feels like there's too few keys in it to be that long. So it makes sense. It feels like it just kind of drifts from this key to this key. Now, if the character's kind of underneath that bar for that amount of time, and we're getting little hip shifts and changes in the weight, that's cool. But if we got like just a few keyframes that is sort of drifting over those, then it's what we call floaty. It feels a little. It feels even in how it's transitioning between the keys there. And so my first instinct would just be to speed up that section just a little bit, but you don't have to. It could be that you just add a little bit more texture to it while it's down there. I do think you could play around with the timing just in general and just see, like, okay, like, just by shifting it a frame here or there, like, let's see, as the character ducks down right there, like, could you clean up that? Can you clean up this motion here to where we hit this point and then go down to this point a little quicker? And so instead of getting here and having this hesitation and then going down, like, just make this all part of one motion right there. Does that make sense? And so some of that will be in the timing, some of that will be in the curves. I think you need the weight shift that I've been talking about with a lot of other people's work. Right there as the character takes the step through. And I think that you need a little bit of this, like, push off right through here. You feel the back foot just feels like it kind of drifts forward. So, like, in my head, we hit this keyframe right about there, right? And then everything is just sort of moving together to here, right? And so I can kind of feel the keyframes hitting. I feel like all the keyframes hit at the same time right there. Right? Now I'll hit and stop. And so I think you need a little bit more overlapping and action and everything. And so right here, if the hips start moving forward first, but that foot stays back there a little longer, let's say instead of here, let's say this foot is still kind of pushing back here, right? So this is really hard to draw on the mouse, right? It's going to feel like that back foot is pushing the hips forward, and then it can come forward. And so a lot of that's just going to be in the graph editor and just overlapping some stuff, changing like when things start and stop to get a little bit more overlapping action in all of the motions. So I didn't really mean to close that early. So yeah, that would be the big things I would focus on: a little overlapping action, the hip shifts, and I think playing with the timing just to bump that up just a little bit more. I actually really like what happens after the character gets under here, like from here to here. I really like how that looks. If it just had just a little bit more hip shifting, I think it would look really nice. But overall, it's coming along pretty well. Just those are some areas you can kind of bump it up. Okay, Jessica. Let's let this play through once to speed up. Okay. There we go. Yeah, so my big thing on this is I feel like it just needs a little bit more polish in some of the small detail stuff. I actually think you got some really nice poses in here. But it's stuff like when the character's foot hits the ground right there, the toe stays rolled back for quite a while before it finally like flattens out. And so just changing those keyframes to happen faster just on that foot. So the heel hits and then maybe 2 frames later the toes flatten out. Right. I think also stuff like I was just saying in JC's, like having stuff sort of happen at slightly different times. I think you get a little bit more play going in the upper chest here, like feeling like the upper chest sort of drags behind some of the other motion and then overshoots. I think the biggest thing I'm noticing is the character just kind of hits a wall right there at the end. Like it's just like dunk, like if I were to draw a wall right there, it almost feels like he like smacks into it, right? And so just having the character shoot past that point a little bit and sort of either ease into it over a longer period of time or sort of shoot past it and ease back into it. And so you just need some, like we call that settle. You need to let the character kind of settle into that final pose instead of just smack it, you know. Overall, though, this is actually looking pretty good. One thing I would say, I feel like on this last step with the right foot, right there, it's a little bit before that. Oh, there we go. I feel like that foot's maybe coming up a little too high. It's also probably a little too flat. So you may even just be able to change the angle and, you know, have it kind of dipping a little bit more like this, right? And just by doing that, it may fix it. But it feels like that it's coming up a little high on that step. I feel like it needs a little polish, but you actually have a really nice foundation here. So just need to kind of put the finishing touches on it. So good work. I'm going to go ahead and stop now because I'm about a third of the way through, and this video is at 25 minutes. So it looks like this will end up being 3 videos. So talk to you soon. Bye.